Ariana Grande or a Miley Cyrus who have 400 million subscribers, but she has millions of people who are subscribing to her and following her all the time. So the numbers are constantly rising for Katy Perry when it comes to conversation on social media with Facebook subscribers, Twitter followers, and people who are watching her videos on YouTube, which of course is all at Katy Perry. And she is, yes, one of the over 1,000 celebrities and wrestlers we are following for you. Now, in terms of a 5-star scale perspective rating for this year's Pepsi halftime show, easy, 3 out of 5 stars, taking 2 off for some of the things that I didn't agree with. The combination of Ariana Grande or Katy Perry and Lenny Kravitz was something that I really didn't appreciate, and the fact that we had so much negativity going in to this year's Super Bowl towards both the actual game and the Pepsi halftime show, and just with how uncertain I was going into it. So I'll rate it 3 out of 5. You probably have a more satisfactory rating in your mind, and I do invite you to share it with us on our Facebook page at HEW Entertainment and on our Twitter at Jonathan Clarke 1. You can also leave it for us in the comments of our YouTube channel at Jonathan Clarke 22. With how many good things we had for this year's Pepsi halftime show, there were a lot of things that could have been improved on for the Pepsi halftime show that hopefully they'll get in there for next year's Pepsi halftime show, which will headline Super Bowl 50, which is going to be probably just as big of a game as what we saw this year with the final of 28-24 in favor of the New England Patriots, which were my team, by the way. I don't mean to keep rubbing it in week after week on this show, but initially what I had predicted was that the New England Patriots were going to take it, and they definitely did. They proved all their naysayers and critics wrong, which is something I really appreciated about the New England Patriots. I thought that momentum, along with that negativity, was going to take them through the Super Bowl, and it definitely did, with the final 28-24 in favor of the New England Patriots. And from some what of you have been saying, you thought it was one of the closest Super Bowls ever. I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that more so than what you had to say about the Katy Perry performance, because some of you approved of the performance, some of you were against it. It was a very diverse Pepsi halftime show this year. You know, some people will immediately come in here on YouTube and say, you know, it was an awesome show. You know, people, the reviewers on entertainment news programs the morning after were putting it over as an absolutely incredible performance. The choice of attire, the choice of costumes, the choice of pyrotechnics, the choice of the song set that went behind the Pepsi halftime show, the combination of Missy Elliott getting in there with Lenny Kravitz joining Katy Perry on stage and sharing it with her, sharing in the glory. A lot of people chose to immediately jump to putting it over. I'm not someone who immediately is going to put it over. I'm going to throw a fair share of criticism towards it. I'm not all for it. As I said, you know, at least 80 to 85% of me is for it, and the other 14 to 15% of me is so much against of it, because one of the biggest reasons was there was a lot of room for improvement. As I just said, you know, 3 out of 5 stars. And one thing you will notice is I didn't go all the way, but I do congratulate her on how far she did manage to get with the performance. You can easily rate it 3 out of 5 stars. And there are a lot of video reviews, much like our video reviews on Katy Perry's performance at the Pepsi halftime show. But the reason for me dropping a video blog on the performance of Katy Perry at the halftime show, sharing it with Lenny Kravitz and Missy Elliott, is because so many people have been asking me, coming up to me over the last couple of days, asking me what my opinion was on the Pepsi halftime show. You know, it's either that or the discussion on Frozen and this new animated short that Frozen has put out, which is actually going to become available over the next couple of months, all, of course, in anticipation of the release of the sequel from the previous installment of Frozen in 2013. We're going to get that sometime throughout 2016, 2017, I'm predicting. And we have a big year theatrical coming out. We, of course, have the SpongeBob SquarePants live-action movie. Very skeptical on that. Jurassic World and the Avengers Age of Ultron, which is going to be a big one in terms of cash flow and just ticket sales. It's going to be amazing how much the new Avengers movie gets over. But theatrically, we saw a lot of commercial advertising for some theatrical releases from companies like Disney and Marvel, of course, who have now teamed up for the new Disney Infinity 2.0. But in 2015, it's going to be a big year theatrically in terms of numbers, box office domination, and ticket sales. And I'm really looking forward to movies such as Age of Ultron, the new Avengers movie, movies like Jurassic World, and the new Cinderella movie, which is going to be done live-actionally from Disney, along with a lot of Disney releases as well this year. It's going to be amazing. The commercial advertising And Katy Perry's performance definitely got over the Super Bowl, and if 4.5 to 5 million was spent on one commercial advertisement from a company like Coca-Cola, then it was a 4.5 to 5 million deficit that was definitely well spent. A lot of creativity went into those commercial advertisements, and just as much promotion and creativity went into the Pepsi halftime show, although there was a lot of room for improvement. Now, I will be honest with you. I'm not the biggest Katy Perry fan in the world. Now, if you were to rewind 3 or 4 years ago, I was a bigger Katy Perry fan than what I am choosing to be now, especially after coming off the Pepsi halftime show. You go back to, say, I don't know, 2010, 2011, was really a diehard fan of Katy Perry, just as big of a Katy Perry fan as I was of a Miley Cyrus or a Selena Gomez or a Demi Lovato back in 2010, 2011. But Katy Perry is nowhere near the credibility of someone like a Taylor Swift, who can go away for about a year and a half to 2 years, come back with just one or two singles, and go all the way back to number one and reclaim her top spot on the top 40 American Billboard chart. It takes Katy Perry literally months to get to the top of the Billboard chart. The fastest rising song Katy Perry ever had on a top 40 American Billboard chart was that song Roar. And you can pretty much state for the record that Katy Perry's song Roar is what put her on the top of the top 40 American Billboard chart and put her back in the position that she was in 2010, sort of where she left off from. If not for that song Roar, she probably wouldn't be as big as an Ariana Grande or an Iggy Azalea is right now. And I think that a lot of people would agree with me with that statement, because I think that Katy Perry is kind of one of those celebrities that kind of, comes and goes away, and people forget about. And then when she comes back, she's noticed, but she's not noticed in the way of someone like a Taylor Swift or an Ariana Grande, who can go away for a significant amount of time, come back, and it's almost as if they never left. You kind of notice the absence of someone like Katy Perry, but when she comes back, she doesn't immediately dominate the charts. Roar was one of the first singles to do that. And it took her some time to get to the top of the top 40 American Billboard chart. Someone as opposed to Katy Perry, like a Taylor Swift or an Ariana Grande, can go away, and within a week to 2 weeks, they're back where they left off on the top of the top 40 American Billboard chart. And that's why I thought there were far more effective ways to showcase the Pepsi halftime show this year than what they chose to do with the combination of the trifecta, if you would, of Katy Perry, Lenny Kravitz, and Missy Elliott. The duet between Katy Perry and Missy Elliott was good, but it wasn't good enough, in my opinion. And there are more reasons than enough to knock off a few stars off my potential 5 out of 5-star potential scale rating for the Pepsi halftime show, because I have seen better. For instance, Madonna will share the stage with Ed Sheeran and Ariana Grande, another big name that could headline the Pepsi halftime show this year, Ed Sheeran. Ariana Grande will share the stage with Ed Sheeran and Madonna. Madonna's performance at the Pepsi halftime show a number of years ago was definitely better than what Katy Perry's performance was, and the reason for that was because she was a legend. Anytime you put a legend on the stage with Katy Perry or someone like an Ariana Grande, you know it's going to get over. But the thing is, Lenny Kravitz and Katy Perry, if Lenny Kravitz would have teamed up with someone who was more suitable for his style, which he didn't do, I think he would have got over more effectively on the Pepsi halftime show than what he did. And that's why we're seeing so much criticism thrown towards this year's Pepsi halftime show, along with the positive reviewers out there. But like I said, earlier on, I'm kind of half and half on the Pepsi halftime show this year. So much of me is for it, and so much of me is against it, of course. But with the following that Roar had after it was dropped on the top 40 American Billboard chart, with how many downloads it had on iTunes and the number of watches it secured for itself on Devo and YouTube with the music video and its premiere shortly after the single. Initially, what they did for Roar, and that was interesting how popular the music video was. And I think the reason why the music video was so popular for Roar was because they didn't immediately release a music video for it. They just released a video with lyrics for the song and a few graphic enhancements that our producers put out. And then a couple of months after the single Roar premiered on iTunes, I think what got the music video over was there were so many people that were overkill with anticipation to see the video. There you see a still image from the actual video that we took to make our graphic with, if you're watching the YouTube edition of our show rather than the actual audio archive. With the anticipation that went behind the premiere of the music video, that's why it got over, and that's why the single was downloaded even more times on iTunes than it previously had been. And that's why it beat out Lady Gaga by several thousand downloads, 250,000 downloads statistically. And that's why people are still listening to Roar, because it kicked off the Pepsi halftime show and the set of songs Katy Perry chose to do for the half an hour to 45 minutes she was on stage, giving both the teams a bit of a reprieve. And that's why we had such an exciting second half. They all came out revved up, After the Pepsi halftime show, we had a lot of Super Bowl fans who were fans of Katy Perry, and we had a combination of fans of the music business and sports worlds coming together for one of the biggest Super Bowls of all time. So do I think Katy Perry made history? Well, I'll go as far as to say, yeah, she did. She didn't give the best performance in the history of the Pepsi halftime show since it's been being done, but she did do a great job, and she did make history. And it's the Super Bowl definitely going back to relive, something that the NFL Network will definitely have highlights of for many years to come. You can give your congratulations to Katy Perry both on Facebook, Twitter, and on her YouTube channel. It's all at Katy Perry, and you can see highlights of the Pepsi halftime show sharing the stage with Missy Elliott and Lenny Kravitz. You can see highlights of that on her Facebook page, on her Twitter, and on her YouTube channel. There are highlights of it all over the internet, and I want your opinion on it. So give it to us on our Facebook page at HEW Entertainment and on Twitter at Jonathan Clarke 1. As I said here earlier, so many people were asking me my opinion on the Pepsi halftime show, so there it is for you, and you can go back and listen to it on a recap on our YouTube channel, which I will archive for you at Jonathan Clarke 22. Leave it for me in the comments and throw it up for me on our Facebook page and tweet it for me on Twitter. It's Katy Perry at the Pepsi halftime show. I was talking about the Pepsi halftime show for weeks on this show, and that's what was interesting about the Pepsi halftime show this year. I had no idea who was performing. So when I found out it was Katy Perry, kind of making a comeback in the music business, I was like, this is something to be excited over because we haven't heard anything from Katy Perry in a while. We got a scattered singles such as Dark Horse, dropped from her featuring Juicy J. I said one of the fallbacks of the Pepsi halftime show this year was the fact Juicy J sat it out and was substituted for kind of with Missy Elliott kind of replacing him, but it's just amazing how far the Pepsi halftime show was taken and how it got over securing that 1 billion buys. And really at the end of the day, that's all that's important. As long as the money was generated, the cash flow, and the 1 to 2 billion viewers were secured for the Super Bowl, making it the biggest sporting event each year that it's done in February. As long as they get that 1 to 2 million buys, I mean, what more needs to be said? How much more credit do you have to give something? I was psyched about Katy Perry's performance. It could have been better than what it was, but do I think she made history? Undoubtedly she did, teaming up with Lenny Kravitz and Missy Elliott. It could have been better, but she definitely did make history. What do you think of it all? Let me know on our Facebook page at HEW Entertainment and on Twitter at Jonathan Clarke 1. Thank you for asking me, by the way, for feedback on the Pepsi halftime show this year, because I wasn't initially planning to do a video blog on the Pepsi halftime show in general. It was just going to be me giving a review of the entire Super Bowl and throwing some brief comments in on the actual Pepsi halftime show and the performance of Katy Perry and Lenny Kravitz. But if you were to ask me over the last couple of days what my thoughts were on that show, I would have either said, you could have taken Lenny Kravitz out of it, or I would have summed it up for you in 1 to 2 words, and those 2 words would have been Ariana Grande, or something probably vulgar